All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Clerk, can you please read the public speaker guidelines and emergency evacuation plan announcement?
Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left or right front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, proceed to the assembly area located in front of the Department of Social Services building at 900 East Marshall Street. Able persons should assist visually and hearing impaired visitors with exiting the building. Public speaker guidelines. Individuals wishing to speak during public hearings in the public comment period are generally allowed 3 minutes to speak. Persons appearing before the committee are not allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person, including comments directed at public officials or staff members that are not related to their official duties, or address or question staff members directly. All questions are to be directed to the committee chair. Failure to adhere to the guidelines may result in speakers forfeiting any remaining time, and further disciplinary action is necessary, which could include barring from attendance at future meetings of the committee for a period of 6 months. Members of the public who registered in advance to speak virtually will be called at the appropriate time, either during the public comment period or during the public hearing for the legislation in which they signed up to address. And Madam Chair, all members of the committee are in attendance today, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Let's proceed with public comment.
Public comment is now open. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this committee regarding items not on today's agenda? Madam Chair, seeing none and no one signed up to speak virtually before the 10 a.m. deadline, the public comment period is now closed and back to the committee.
Thank you so much. Let's proceed with approval of minutes.
The minutes to be approved are for December 11, 2024 for the Governmental Operations Standing Committee meeting held at 1 p.m. If there are no amendments or corrections, then the meeting minutes will stand approved as presented.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Let's proceed to our presentations, and I believe we have Interim Director Scott Morris here to provide a presentation on the preliminary findings from HNTB. Thank you for coming down. Can you speak into the mic a little bit closer? Thank you.
Is that better? A little bit too loud too. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Director Morris, and I'm going to go over the preliminary findings for the HNTB investigation. And it does not seem to be clicking.
You can try now.
Okay, so what I've done on the first slide is go through and just kind of list the findings in the report. And just from a kind of a sequence of operations, I'm going to list the findings, the recommendations, and I'm going to kind of do a hierarchy and like an overview in the subsequent slides. So the findings of the first bullet point is that the water treatment plant experienced a complete loss of power. The water treatment plant was operating in a winter mode, and I'll go over that in a subsequent slide. The bus tie failed to transfer power from the primary feed to the secondary feed. Effluent valve uninterrupted power source, or UPS, did not close the effluent valves. Diesel pumps were used to dewater the basement, but not adequate to overcome the flow. The basement flooded, resulting in damage to the equipment, and the water plant outage was for nearly about 36 hours. Typical staffing is 3 operators, and there was a lack of established standard operating procedures, or SOPs, for routine or emergency operations. And some of the recommendations from the preliminary report is to operate the water treatment plant in a summer mode of operation. And again, I'll go over that in a little bit. Develop a bus tie failure plan in the event that you need to operate the facility. Implement severe storm event response protocols. Install filter effluent valve UPSs with a minimal runtime of 1 hour. Install SCADA, or supervisory control and data acquisition UPSs with runtime of 1 hour. Develop written SOPs for staff and routinely train staff. Expand the DPU emergency operation manual to include specific actions. Review staffing plans to increase staffing to 4 operators per shift, raise electrical systems above the basement where practical, and provide an automatic transfer system for the existing backups generator system. So as you see here on the slide and in your handout, you have the 2 different modes of operation that is indicated in the report. And these same schematics are shown in the report in and of itself. But the primary difference between the 2 modes of operation is the single point of failure in the winter mode in SG6. You can see if that bus tie in the upper section fails to close, basically you don't have power going to the entirety of your plant, and that's a failure point. And so in summer mode, you have redundancies that allow you to operate either bus tie being in a failure position. So ultimately, that's a simplistic way of explaining, those electrical schematics without diving too deep into those discussions. Now, the water treatment plant is no longer going to be operating in a winter mode. We are always operating in a summer mode from this point on. So that level of redundancy is going to be baked into the system. Bus tie failure plan. I just want to take a moment to talk about, the standard operating procedures. We have been going through and revising the SOPs for the plant, including the bus tie failure plan. Those training manuals, SOPs, especially for this item, has been trained on by staff. They signed off on it, and we've had the individuals, both the maintenance staff and the operational staff, testify that they've received the training that they need in the event that they need to operate either the bus tie or the backup generators, and the plans and steps that they need to take in the event of the failure. Now, I'm going to go over this in a little bit deeper into subsequent discussions, but in conjunction with this SOP, we are going to be doing a broad brush approach for SOPs in general for the entirety of the plant. We've identified the need to update approximately 53 SOPs they'll be rolling out over the next several months. And then staff are going to be trained on those SOPs, both initially, but then on an annual basis, and then obviously new staff that come on board will get that complete training. And that SOP is going to be in a digital format, but a manual format for the plant operators to view in the future as well. Storm response protocol. This is not our plant, but it is kind of indicative of showing you, what type of planning efforts you need to do. So storm response protocol, subsequent to the event, we have gone through the process of identifying checklists that need to be completed in advance of storm event, verification. Maintenance staff have that checklist. It's incorporated into our maintenance system, and those staff go through and verify chemical levels, fuel levels, staffing and augmentation if we need to, both in like phased increments, like 24, 48 hours, and 72 hours in advance of a storm event. One of the items addressed in the recommendations was the upsizing of UPSs. This is an example of what a UPS looks like. It's basically a power source that's localized. Now, we've gone through and looked at the electrical loads associated with those UPSs, and we're currently in the process of doing the finalization of the replacement of some of the valve actuators in the plant. And once those are completed, we'll be going through and doing a field test verification, both of the valve sequence, ensuring that they do a full close, but also on the stability and long-term use of those UPSs. Now, with any system that's in place, there's degradation over time. So annually thereafter, we're going to be doing that same field test to verify that those UPSs have adequate capacity to do the operations they're intended to design to be to. I spoke to this just briefly, but this is just the SOPs. The general finding was there was a need of enhanced SOPs and operational training, and we're going to be doing that in the future with a planned completion of over the next several months. Staffing was a primary finding of looking at, how could we augment the staff to provide additional redundancy. We're currently looking at those protocols, and we're probably leaning on waiting to the interim report and final report come to fruition, and a little bit probably be included in that regarding a recommended staffing augmentation. But in general speaking, we're looking to enhance the additional operators by 1 person per shift and seeing how we can accommodate that. One of the recommendations was associated with electrical, moving it above the potential flood area. Those are going to be incorporated in future projects. If we were to go through right now and just raise all the electrical equipment, we'd have to go through and do a complete design. It's more cost effective for us as new projects come online to add those to the additional project. That's going to require a little bit of design maneuvering, but also adding a couple of line items to the budget to incorporate those. But it'd be more cost effective to do it on those upcoming projects as they come to fruition. One of the also recommendations was the backup generator. This is an automatic transfer switch for that backup generator. We do have an existing project that was already phased to do this. That project is in progress right now. We anticipate that being incorporated and being substantially completed with the generator in service by November of 2025. And that system would be in the event that you lost primary power, secondary power, and obviously your UPSs were out of power. It would automatically transfer the primary feed and secondary feed to the backup generators without having manual staff to come in and do a swap over. I think it's not transferring anymore, but I think that's like the last. Yep. So with that, I'll open myself up to any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. I know we have many, and I appreciate that you've come down here today and given, I think, a good high-level synopsis of where we are, particularly for those who maybe are just tuning in and trying to catch up. But obviously, I know my colleagues and I have more specific questions. So, Ms. Abubakar, do you have a question? Sorry, I thought I saw your.
Yeah, no, I've got questions. Okay, so a few, starting with the electrical panels. Is it standard practice that electrical panels are at basement level and like in other facilities, or is that sort of unique to the age of the Richmond facility?
So if you're asking if the best management practice is to install electrical equipment in the lowest possible area, I would say no. And due to the age of the equipment, standards have changed over time. So as we do redesigns of the system, those type of systems have been put in a more protective environment. And so those electrical systems would normally be in an upper elevation in standard designs.
And so I appreciate that there's sort of a process for that, so that you're not just doing this significant upfront investment, but as projects go along. But do you have like a sort of an ETA for when all those electrical panels will be moved up above basement level?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. And then one of the things that was mentioned was that the staff hadn't been involved in any tabletop exercises. And I know, to me, that's different than an SOP. Have you all planned any tabletop exercises for emergency procedures at this time?
So we have not gone through like a tabletop exercises, which is in the traditional format. Now, the process that we put in place is first we're going to develop all the SOPs. And so like when we go through and we've developed the backup generator transfer or the backup power supply failure, those have been gone through and step-by-step walked through those items with the staff. That's kind of a hierarchy of like the, emergency planning training exercise. But as we develop more of these SOPs, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be updating our emergency action plan, our emergency operation plans, and then incorporating those training exercises into that. Ideally, we're going to be doing multiple training exercises a year going forward, and they'll vary from different type of operations. It could be something associated with like a chemical spill, power loss, or anything of that nature. Mostly trying to make sure that staff are acclimated to those procedures and they know what to do. It's always nice to have the manual procedure there readily available so you can walk through the steps. But there is something to be said for muscle memory on knowing what to do, when to do it. And so you have to routinely practice those things. So that's an objective we're going to be moving forward with to make sure we have.
Great, thank you. And then just one last quick question. In terms of logistics for the HNTB report, I know that this was a preliminary report. and frankly, I was a little bit disappointed in sort of its heft. When do we plan on getting the next iteration of this report? And have you gotten any indication from HNTB as to what sort of additional research and findings they're looking to do for that?
Yeah, so I believe the interim report should be coming out in a little bit, say like within a week or so. And then obviously there's going to be a final report. I think that was probably time frame within the next month or so. I think, if I can recall correctly on the schedule. I believe it'll be a little bit more in depth than the preliminary report, because obviously the preliminary report was just to get information out to individuals. So there's going to be a little bit more of a deeper dive into those reports.
And will they be coming back to like share they did the preliminary, they were part of this operations meeting last month. Would they be coming back to sort of answer questions about that report moving forward?
Yeah, I believe the intention to be as open and transparent about the report and to answer questions as much as practical. I don't know if it's going to be the GovOps or another council committee session, but I believe the intention is to share those findings and to answer questions openly to everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think, part of the scheduling had to do with when council meetings were falling, and we wanted as quickly as possible to get the HNTB consultants in front of a body. If it wasn't going to be OD, then it would be GovOps. So I think now that we're a little bit more into a normalized pace of work, I think it'd be most appropriate for the next larger round of information sharing to be at OD if it falls within that calendar. Obviously, we don't want the report released and then us not all to be able to get together. So I think just if you could provide some more detail on that schedule and how it aligns with council committees or full council or OD, that would be appreciated. Councilmember Gibson?
Thank you. I guess this is a question both to Chair Jordan and also perhaps to the clerk. I was wondering, or I have a request, just from a reporting standpoint, if the actual report can be uploaded to the agenda in addition to the presentation, just I think for public access to have and to see the preliminary report side by side. I think that would be good to do just for availability. I wanted to ask, having, reviewing the report, I did see several notes regarding just the documentation that HNTB has received. And the report notes that there are some documents that have been outstanding that they're waiting to get. So I wanted to see, what those are. But also, I guess, I was wondering if you could clarify the access that HNTB has had to internal communications, emails. I think that it's important. My initial thought in reading the report was that it's very technical and certainly gets at the technical misses, as the events transpired beginning on January the 6th, but it doesn't get as much to the systemic issues that may have brought us to where we are. And I think that's really very critical. And I think that's what the public is hoping to get an appreciation of as well. And so, you had mentioned that there was an existing project. I believe if you're referring to the switch, there was some media coverage about the switch not being ordered. What is the information that HNTB is getting in order to identify why that purchase hadn't been made yet? How much documentation in terms of email communications has HNTB received or will be receiving to get to those systemic issues?
Yeah, so HNTB received access to all of our staff, and so they went through and they did interviews that they needed to for the staff. We've provided them all the communications that we've provided for everybody that has requested, like the FOIAs that we received regarding the communications, so they've had access to that. The subsequent requests for information that they've asked for had in the preliminary report where they said we needed to provide them some additional information. That was related to some like as-built that they had requested that we had to compile and give them. Subsequently to that, we've given them all those access to those files. So they've had open and transparent access to everything and anything we have. We've given them the same level of access and same information in the subsequent VDH investigation that's going on, so that they have the same information to make the same level of decisions for both parties. So we wanted to make sure that any and all information was readily available to them. To date, I think they've had all the information they've requested given to them. If they need anything else, by all means, I'll be ready to provide that information to them. That's our overall point, is we wanted to be open and transparent. This findings would be something that would lead to a better utility, and we see that as an opportunity for improvement. So anything that they would find that indicated any type of communication issues that we need to resolve, hopefully I've already resolved those and then working on a better communication plan. But if they have a findings that we want to incorporate, my intent would be to have that as an available resource so that we can build off of and make a better utility.
Yes. And so the preliminary report that we received does not make any mention about the backup generators. Do you know why that's missing from this preliminary report?
I think it was more intention to try to drive at what was done and what was not done. My understanding is the backup generators were not engaged, and I believe the interim report will address those items as well.
Thank you. And then getting back to the, understanding kind of the systemic issues, was Ms. Bingham, has she now been interviewed and contacted to participate in the report?
We did reach out to her and asked, did she want to participate? And she declined that offer.
Understood. And I also wanted to inquire, about so the governor and the mayor declared a state of emergency. I want to make sure that it's very clear what actions happened as a result of that and what didn't happen as a result of that. Do you have any initial thoughts in that respect?
Yeah, so the preliminary report kind of speaks a little bit to it. And then obviously I'll probably go a little bit more depth in the interim report and final report. But staff was done some pre-storm checks were done on the generators in previous days. But staff augmentation that would have warranted 24/7 operation like we're doing right now until we get the UPSs and the backup generator installed, that did not occur. And that's in the preliminary report, and also it should be in the more detailed analysis of that in the interim and final.
Thank you. And then going back to the documentation, has HNTB received the list of questions that the council body submitted to include in their report, those answers?
We have shared everything that's been requested with them.
Thank you. And I have, I guess my final question is just regarding the monies that have been spent on the project to date. At our our council meeting on Monday, the mayor shared that thus far the city has spent about $5 million. When will we receive an overview of what was spent?
So we're still going through the process. I think what the mayor was providing was in regards to what the anticipated spend with the actuators and everything we have in place. So I would rationalize that we can do some type of summary to provide to council after we get to full restoration, because some of this aspect, as I mentioned earlier, we kind of pulled stuff from projects. So if we want to get a full picture of it, I need to know what the actual cost for, moving up the valve actuator project, moving up the generator project. And I think it would be best suited if I wait till all those get completed so you get the full tally. That being said, we could give you an interim report after, the valve actuators are done and the UPSs are installed, but that's still not going to be complete. That would be April timeframe. But if you're looking for like a full complete kind of synopsis, that's probably more akin to like the November 2025 timeframe.
I just want to make clear. So you're saying that we're not going to get a comprehensive overview of how much was spent on this until November?
Because one of the projects and recommendations that we're doing is in response to incorporating the generator into the electrical system. And that project is satiated to be or projected to be completed in November 2025.
Right, but there has to be some type of estimate, understanding of what, what the encumbered amount is for that particular item.
Yeah. And I said before, we can give you an interim one probably in April timeframe, and that'll give you probably a comprehensive look. but it's not going to be exact because we're still be having incurring costs for
Yeah.
the additional recommendations.
Understood. I appreciate that. I think the sooner that can be received, the better. The mayor will be presenting his budget to the public in March 27th, I believe. And I think having a clear understanding about what has already been spent as we're reviewing the projected and proposed new budget items, that will be a pretty important piece of the puzzle to have.
Understood, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I guess I would start with my comments with just a resounding feeling of gratitude. The more that we learn about how chaotic this event was, I'm truly grateful that no one was injured because it was very dangerous. And just also continued gratitude for everyone who's been putting in extra time to get us through this situation and get us into a better, more stable footing. So I want to lead with that before I go into my questions because people really stepped up to the moment, and no one wanted to be there. That's for sure. I would imagine. My first comment would be, some of these upgrades that we're learning more about were recommendations from the last, big hurricane event that affected the water plant. And so I think it would be helpful to understand sort of within that plan, in that context, what was actualized. Because I think what I would hate to see us have happen after this is to not fully follow through on these recommendations. So sort of learning from that process of we react to an event, we make upgrades or improvements, and just really making sure we're thorough and consistent that, okay, if we're going to have a redundant power line now, there's a system to make sure it switches over when we're in a precarious weather event, or just having them be redundant and both aligned at all times. So that would be sort of one question, like comparing like the plan that was put in place and how strictly do we adhere to it. My second question, which I think keeps coming up, and I think we would benefit from a response here right now, is within that EPA report, which for many of us is not our area of expertise, but trying to understand what was critical, what wasn't, and then what was responded to after that report came in. Now that you've been at the plant for a little bit, do you have a sense for repairs that were underway that maybe the public wasn't made aware of, or the council wasn't made aware of? Because we didn't get into that in that initial interim report. I'll pause. I've got a couple more questions, but if you could respond to that EPA question. Thank you.
Yes, too. Did you want me to respond to the first one too?
Yes.
Okay. Just in general, plans are put in place. You shouldn't be reactive because that puts you in a bad posture. We are in the process now of updating a majority of our emergency action plans, emergency operation plans, our master plans, basically looking at the 5-year horizon and what needs to be incorporated. That's going to be the standard mode of operating going forward. I can't speak to the past of why those weren't incorporated and it was more of a reactive versus a proactive posture. But with the understanding of how we want to be in the situations, we want to address the items before they come to fruition. And we also want to make sure that, recommendations either they're implemented because there's good recommendations, or they're not implemented and there's justification of why they're not implemented. So there could be times when it's not feasible to do one recommendation because you may be doing a similar project that needs to be incorporated with. So you may deprioritize the recommendation and postpone it because you already have another project on the table and you want to do it in year 3 versus year 1. And those type of discussions need to be had, but they also need to be clarified. So like the public needs to know, you guys need to know that, we are adjusting the recommendations and there's some level of commitment associated with that. So that's my commitment to you guys that I will do that. And then the next question in that was the 2022 EPA report and the length of time in response, but also the actions that have been taking place in those recommendations. So I've gone to the plant, I've looked at it. Several of the items, I would say a vast majority of them have been addressed. One of the ones, the screens, you saw those in that picture, is an old rusty screen. And I've seen that multiple times. There's a nice new screen there as part of a project that was put in place. A lot of the structural items have been identified at least in a future project, or the vegetation that was there has been removed. A lot of the items have some phase of implementation. I'm not going to commit that everything has been done because I haven't done a full assessment of the EPA report and basically checked the box for everything. And I'd like to be as forthcoming as I can. but I would say that a large majority of the items have been addressed or are ongoing to be addressed.
Thank you very much. I had 3 other questions here. In addition to coming back to us with maybe a firmer schedule of the presentations that council can expect, I think I think we'll get to hopefully the final report, the next report will have a recommended schedule for the implementation of these different things that we can all better understand and set expectations. Obviously we knew it was a certain type of crisis when it's the water plant, but you're the interim director of public utilities. And if this had been Richmond Gas Works, it could have been a totally different type of disaster. And so I'm just wondering when you might be at a juncture where you can step back and say, okay, are we ready for an event at Gasworks? What else do we need to be worried about? Are we as resilient and prepared as we need to be for all of our infrastructure?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Speaking to that, my philosophy, my vision for the department is the same as I've been putting forth with the water treatment plant, is we need to be prepared for everything. There needs to be an SOP for most operations, even the most mundane type of operation needs to have an SOP. There needs to be training. There needs to be tabletop exercises. That's going to transition from the water, wastewater, stormwater, and gas utility. All of those are the same. Now, it will take time to get all those ducks in a row, per se, but we are in the infancy stage of making sure that all those are done. That including our resiliency, our condition assessments, all of our plans, reviewing them on an annual basis, looking at our procedures on a frequency that's predetermined. Obviously, you don't need to update an SOP every year, but you may need to update it every 3 years. Conditions change, right? So it's going through indexing those policies, those procedures, looking at where there might be a gap per se, and then establishing a frequency and a schedule, and then assigning somebody responsibility for making sure that those schedules are adhered to, and that person would report directly to me, making sure that I know I can check in on those schedules, and I'm going to take that as an action item for myself to make sure that we're resilient, we're reliable in all of our utilities.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, one of the goals of the Public Utilities Commission is to add that extra layer of, public insight and sight lines into the utilities. And to the extent we have staff turnover, like to have another body that can say, it's been 3 years, what's the update? So I appreciate that you came to their last meeting. I know we're still working to get them, I think, as empowered as they need to be to meet the moment. But I just wanted to say thank you for going to that meeting, and I appreciate the response. Do we have any other questions from the committee?
Yes. Director Morris, Henrico County just invested or is proposing to invest $50 million into their water infrastructure. Knowing that we are coming up on a budget season, are you preparing for, should we as council members be expecting a significant ask in infrastructure investment in the water facility? And have you sort of got a ballpark number for that?
Yeah, so I'm not expecting in the short term a significant request or increase. As we go through and do these conditional assessments, revisions of our EOPs or EAPs, they're going to necessitate a review of the capital improvement plan, making sure that we're getting to the projects we need to. That does take a little bit of time. So at least in this budget season, I don't anticipate any significant increase as related to this event or additional projects that I may see needed in the future.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to circle back to was with the Virginia Office of Drinkable Water. It's something that continues to circle back is the question as to whether this was preventable or not. And it seems to be a difference in opinion between the Virginia Office of Drinkable Water and the administration. And so I just wanted to get a sense of, they've asserted that there's a lack of confidence that the city will be able to reliably provide drinkable water to its residents, and I want to highlight that that's not something that we can allow, but I'm not sure that we can confidently do that if we're not able to acknowledge the possibility that we made a mistake. And so I just want to understand from your perspective, what are the types of things that were avoidable, if any, and so things like not having purchased that switch. I mean, how is it that, are we saying that that was not avoidable? How is it that we're saying, I'm trying to understand, how is it that we're telling the public that we're not sure we made some mistakes?
So I'll go back to like one of the first things I presented on this choice, winter mode versus summer mode. Operating in a summer mode is inherently more stable than winter mode. That failure or mechanical failure of that switch did happen. That's what interrupted the power source. Had we been in summer mode, there would have been an alternative switch to operate. And they did have a standby tie bus on site. They had to transfer that out. So the choice to be in summer mode versus winter mode was one of the primary facts that was discussed in the preliminary report, but also in the interim report and the final report as what caused the power outage.
So is the perspective then that as a city, we had no control over our decision to operate in winter mode versus summer mode? I mean, ultimately that was someone's decision, right? Are we saying? I'm not sure why that kind of releases us from any liability, because that seems like that's a decision that was made.
Right, and I can't speak to past decisions from management, but I can definitively tell you that we're not moving forward with using both those modes of operations. Summer mode is the more reliable mode. That's what we're going to be using. Winter mode is an acceptable mode of operation, but there's contingencies that need to be put in place to ensure that additional reliability. And those contingencies normally would be something akin to getting additional staff on site during likelihood of power outages. Now, those all need to be decided on, and there's a reason, a rationale behind it. But I'm taking the stance that I would like to be as protective as that plant as possible. And so going forward, and I've gotten concurrence with the administration that they're comfortable utilizing summer mode continuously, and that's going to be the mode of operandi going forward.
Would you say it would be standard procedure to, when there is an emergency declared, that you would, as a matter of procedure, switch from winter mode to summer mode as a preventative measure?
So I can't speak to the past management, and I can't speak to other facilities because I don't know if they have a summer mode, winter mode type scenario. But generally speaking, you want to put your plant in the most reliable state as possible, or set up contingencies associated with potential failure, which we've gone through the steps of evaluating our system and making a determination of what those are, and what we have in place today meets those requirements.
So
Thank you. I'm just going to say, I feel pretty confident we're going to get into that level of detail at the next report.
Yes.
And it is important to get it answered.
One final question, and this is really not a question, but a request. But I think given the fact that we have assigned so much importance to the decision to move from summer mode to winter mode to being in summer mode all year long, I think it's important to identify what that cost savings was that allowed us to make that decision, especially because if we're now going to be operating in summer mode all the time, then the understanding is that that will come as an additional cost. And my hope is that the administration can quantify that in very clear terms in this budget process that's upcoming.
Understood.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, colleagues. And we didn't really talk much about, I think, some of the larger future goals, the possibility of regional collaboration. I mean, you hate to be in a crisis situation, but it does force conversations that maybe were long overdue. So I appreciate your attendance here. And I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. You were not at the Public Utilities Commission, but I know they are looking forward to having you there.
Yep.
And thank you for sending a representative in your stead since you're out of town. With that, I will say thank you for being here. We look forward to further responses to council's questions, most notably like firming up the timeline for when we're going to see the next levels of reports. And then, so thank you for being here. And then I'm going to ask our interim CIO to come up for just one moment. There were a couple of questions about the title page of some of our documents here. I was hoping you could give us clarity.
Yes, thank you very much, Sabrina Joyhog, interim CAO. So as you know, Scott Morris, who's really Anthony Scott Morris, Dr. Anthony Scott Morris, joined us towards the end of January as we made the leadership change. He has, as of recently, as of Monday, accepted the permanent position as Public Utilities Director for the City of Richmond. So we're very happy that he is willing to stay with us and work through all of this. And I have, at each meeting I'm in with him, I have been thoroughly impressed. Again, he comes with a doctorate degree in business administration, and he's got an associate's degree in wastewater technology. I mean, when we say that we have a nuclear scientist on our hands, we really do. He's come from the Naval Academy studying nuclear science. So we really do have a nuclear scientist on our hands. So very proud that he has joined us. This is the first public announcement. I didn't realize he was going to change the title page. We do have a press release going out that will come out as well. Okay.
Thank you so much. And I would just sort of reiterate my earlier comment that we have many utilities, and very interested in talking to you at another time about GasWorks and sort of our future goals for the city to be moving in a more sustainable and renewable energy direction. So thank you for everything you've done so far, and welcome. Okay. It was pointed out that on some of the title pages of our documents it said interim, others said director, and I didn't want to steal the thunder of our interim CAO. So thank you for coming down to share the news. Madam Clerk, let's move on to our next item. Okay, thank you, committee. We have a presentation by Peter Briel, our Director of Citizen Service and Response, with providing an overview of RVA 311. Thank you for being here today.
Good afternoon, honorable members of council, and thank you for having me. I am Peter Briel, Director of Citizen Service and Response. So I appreciate the opportunity today to tell you a little bit about Citizen Service and Response, also known as RVA 311. This is a very information-dense presentation, but I'm going to move through it quickly to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. We're entirely focused on providing great customer service at 311. We really have two components. One is our team, and the focus of our team is on...
I'm sorry, if you could just speak a little bit closer into the mic.
Sure.
Thank you.
How's that? We are entirely focused as a team on providing great service through listening, providing information, and ensuring that we understand what the residents' needs are and getting those requests to the appropriate team for resolution. As a tool, you've also heard of RVA 311. We have a portal, we have mobile app, we also have a back-end internal portal, which is used by our agents and by many of the departments to manage their requests. It also provides us with a very robust data source. We have every single request on record, and it gives us great tools for understanding what the needs of the community are and ensuring that we have the resources aligned to deliver them. So building on that idea of great customer service, we really see two components. The part that we handle, which is that intake of requests for our residents, where we focus very heavily on the empathy of understanding what our residents are dealing with, what their needs are, having the professionalism to and knowledge to really understand that broad breadth of the city's services and ensure that we are getting those requests to the right place. And then on the agency side, we're really looking for them where there is an action that needs to be taken to provide that fulfillment through assessment of the request, decision of what needs to be done, action if necessary, which isn't always necessary, but most importantly, communication. And we really stress that we need to be very good at expectation setting, and I would say better at expectation setting throughout this entire process with our residents. So just to give you a little perspective on the activity that we have, in 2024, we received over 200,000 calls. We answered over 160,000. So you'll clearly note we have an opportunity to answer more calls, and we have staffed up pretty significantly in order to do that. As I mentioned before, that professionalism is critical to us. So we have a goal of a 94% call quality, where you actually exceed that. We've exceeded that for the last several years. And that goal and our actual results is about 95%. Compare that to the private sector, where typically goals are in the 70 or 80%. We take very great pride in creating an environment where our call center staff are very aligned on providing great customer service and staying with us, because quite honestly, the city is pretty complex. And so the greater tenure we have, the broader their knowledge and the richer their responses to the needs of our residents. On the call center side, about 40% of our calls are social services, about 30% are finance. Those two make up the bulk of our requests. And then about a little bit less than 20% are public works. That equated in 2024 to 75,000 requests in RBA 311, as well as I would guesstimate another 10,000 requests in RBA pay, because we also take finance requests for vehicle personal property tax, which are entered into a separate system. We try to make self-service as accessible as possible. So about 30% of our requests are actually submitted via self-service. And likewise, on the closed side, we, as a city, close an equivalent number of requests, though keep in mind that the timing is a little bit different because some of those are infrastructure or long cycle. So we're closing about the same number each year, but they may not be from 2024. Probably the thing I'd like to be, I hope will be the greatest takeaway, is it's incredibly valuable to the city that all requests be submitted through 311, because it enables everything else downstream. From a traceability point of view, it gives us a permanent time-stamped record. Nothing pains me more than hearing somebody say that they've called the city multiple times for months or years, and I look into our system and we don't have a request. We have no idea where that request was made, whether it was made to the appropriate team, whether it's on a post-it somewhere. If it's in 311, we have total visibility to it. And that really starts the clock for response as well, that we can start to hold our departments accountable for. Also, having it in that tool, that tool, RVA 311, is the management tool for most of the departments. So not having it in that tool because somebody called the department directly, we don't know where it is, how it's being managed, or whether it was fulfilled. And that information allows us to identify where we have opportunities for process improvement. So really, really vital that we encourage people to submit all of their requests through 311. As a call center, we also pride ourselves on the availability of our services. We always have teams simultaneously remote and on-site for any contingency. For example, storms. We have never shut down for a storm since 2020. We never closed during the pandemic. We are always at the ready. And if something goes down, for example, prior to the election, there were denial of service attacks. So we lost VPN, but we had people on site. Likewise, if we have a storm, we've got people off site and can move people off site quickly. So we're always available and we're adaptable. So the water plant went down on January 6th. The morning of January 7th, we started taking water delivery requests for our vulnerable population. Likewise, when the city moved forward with the Family Crisis Fund for water recovery, we were able to stand up a request on a Friday. And by Monday, we had over 2,200 requests. We're a little surprised by that, but we were very proud of the ability to stand that up and make it accessible in a way that people could get to it 24/7 and over the weekend. So in 2024, early in 2024, we started a customer service enhancement program. And we've really accomplished a lot in the last year, bringing all of our departments together to identify opportunities. One of the big things was working with DIT to implement new contact center technology, which has enabled some of the enhancements that you all have been sharing with your constituents. Thank you very much for that over the last couple of months. As of November, we were able to enable callbacks, so people don't have to wait on hold, but can stay in queue and they receive a call back when it's their turn. I will let you know, just in case you ever hear that that wasn't offered to somebody, if we have extremely high volume, there is a cutoff where we stop offering it just so we don't overload the system. But that's only in extreme situations. We extended our hours of operation. So in thanks to the additional staffing that we had, both call center agents and we added another supervisor so we could support an additional shift. We're now open till 7 p.m. on weekdays and open Saturday mornings. And I strongly encourage you to tell your constituents about those extended hours, even when we have very high volume, because it's new, the utilization of those extended hours is low. So it's the best time possible to call and get quick service. So as I mentioned, we staffed up. We're about 50% higher than budgeted for at the beginning of FY24. And we are doing a pretty broad marketing campaign to make people aware of those new features of callbacks and extended hours. One of the things that we're really putting a lot of emphasis on is moving away from paper and electronic forms anywhere that we can move things into 311. It makes it easier for the resident. They don't have to find something at rva.gov, download it, print it, scan it, upload it, email it. They simply fill out a form on RVA 311. Finance has embraced this, and they are now at a average, or rather target that they are fulfilling of responding to almost all requests within 7 days. So dramatic improvement by utilizing our system, utilizing SOPs around the system to ensure that they're able to manage their work and respond to citizens in a timely manner. And then effective on last Friday, we implemented a after-call customer service survey. So we were excited by that because we've never been able to really measure the customer satisfaction with our agents specifically. And I will just share, right before this meeting, I downloaded the initial results. In answer to the question, how is the service your agent provided today on a scale of 1 to 5? 1,166 requests with a score of 4.6. On a yes, no, 1 being yes, was your agent knowledgeable and professional? 1.1. My agent listened and understood my concerns. 1. So essentially, perfect score on listening and understanding people's concerns. That is our goal as a customer service organization. So we're very proud of that. The other thing I'll mention is continuous improvement. We are always looking at ways to add new features. So just in the last year, we added several new requests, redirected some requests so that they'd be responded to more quickly. And that is an ongoing feature of everything that we do. So that was the great rosy scenario. The thing to bring your attention to is we did staff up dramatically, and we based that staffing on the volume that we saw in 2023 and 2024, where we were averaging about 800 calls per day received. And we wanted to close that gap and, in fact, have additional capacity over that so that we could ensure that even on high volume days, we could answer the calls. So we increased our capacity to take about 900 calls a day. Since the beginning of this year, it's been a rather unusual year. Our call volume is now over 1,200 calls a day. So we're looking to see whether that's a long-term trend or not, and whether we need incremental staffing to be able to meet those needs. As I said, we also try to emphasize self-service channels, but we're really looking at that call trend. A couple of things are easily explained: the water crisis, the family crisis fund, and finance billings. We're really trying to see whether that's a trend or whether that's a temporary blip, and then we'll make a decision from there. But you may hear, and I have to admit I'm a little bit frustrated, you may continue to hear that you have to wait on hold a little bit, and we really thought we'd beaten that. So we're continuing to see how we can improve that performance. So looking ahead, two big emphases this year. One is, as I mentioned before, departmental responsiveness, really looking at and regrounding the departmental and individual teams' target times for response, ensuring that SOPs are in place for providing consistent expectations, communication, and fulfillment of requests. And we're looking at whether we need to put in incremental statuses for that. As many of you probably are aware, we have a request created, request completed. We want to really see if we can add some additional information for the sake of our residents. The other big thing is simplifying the contacting of the city. We have emergency, non-emergency, and kind of sort of not emergency, which is 646-5100, the emergency communications, non-emergency police line. And really the reason for that 5100 number is because we don't have dispatch capabilities in 311, and we don't want to duplicate those of DEC. So what we are looking at is integrating the two systems so that we could take those requests. Think of anything where a team needs to go out in real time, be that a noise violation, a tree fallen in an intersection, a loose dog, an illegally parked vehicle. If we can take those and take that burden off of DEC, we can enable what we need to do is integrate our systems so that we are connected to their dispatch and can refer those requests to them. So those are two big initiatives for us. I'll also add all of this requires technology. So we're also hiring for some business systems analysts to give us the capacity to take all these things on. And then we continue with our continuous improvement. One thing that comes up more often than I'd like is my request was closed with no comment and no action. So I want to walk through a couple of scenarios for how that happens and what we will be doing to try to improve that over time. Code enforcement and zoning are a particular case of this where the two systems cannot be integrated. We know this because we tried. As we move forward, we'll be looking at integration with future systems. But in the meantime, the process, which is pretty reliable, is the request is closed in 311 with a comment that includes the case number in EnerGov, the inspector, and their contact information in the comments. And it is closed when it is opened in EnerGov because they can't manage two sets of requests. It's just a huge administrative overhead to do that. The investigation starts when they move that request. So as long as people know to look in the comments, it is always there who the inspector is and how to get in contact with them. Duplicate requests. Duplicate requests can create some administrative overhead as well. So typically, the standard operating procedure is to keep the oldest request so that we've got that sort of measuring from the longest time the request was open, close the duplicate with a comment that it's a duplicate and a reference to the request ID of the older request. We really need to work with our departments as part of that SOP work that we're doing with them to ensure that that process is always followed. Likewise, when there's an investigation that shows that no action is warranted, same thing. We need to provide an explanation for why no action is warranted and close the request. We need to ensure that that comment is being put in a plain language way that people understand why that decision was made. And another is simply that additional information was required and we were unable to contact the requester. You would be shocked at how many people have not set up their voicemail boxes. So just trying to reach somebody or they don't recognize a number. I mean, I'm guilty. I generally don't answer on my personal phone numbers that I don't recognize. If we're trying to get in touch with somebody and can't, eventually that request will be closed as well. Those are the big reasons why. But really what it comes down to is we need to make sure that we have clear SOPs on every team that's working in 311 and that they're followed. And that is something we're focusing on this year. Lastly, I just want to mention that we have reporting for you. So as long as you create a profile in 311, you have access to the Insights tab. This is actually an enhancement to the quarterly reporting that I used to send. I don't think any of you were here when I was sending that by email, but it was a really manual process. So we automated it and made it available to you all at any time, as well as your constituents, so that you can get reporting both at the district level or your civic associations can get that information at the neighborhood level. And that's it. We've got 3 ways to contact us. 311, calling us, our portal, rva311.com, or downloading our mobile apps. And I just want to offer to you all that I'm more than happy to provide training to your liaisons or come out to your district meetings at any time. Just let me know. So happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. And just speaking for our office, we consistently try and push people to 311 because it is so vital to have that documentation. And not only do we know what's happening in our districts and report that up to the CAO or to the mayor's office, but my understanding is that you equally report up on trends and what's happening across the city as reported through 311. So it's just so vital for people to do that. And I use 311. I had a great experience when I was having a issue with something, and it doesn't matter who you are. We always ask everyone, please start with 311 because it's a terrific tool. So appreciate you coming to speak to it. I'll ask if any of my colleagues have questions or comments.
Well, first off, thank you. You came to the first 4th district meeting, and I still have people that are commenting on what they learned and are emailing us saying, I did 311. It's been a couple days. Can I now reach out to you? So it's been great to kind of see that traction happening in the district. So thank you again for doing that. One of the things that I really found interesting about the more that I've spoken to you and learn about 311 is that I would imagine that sometimes it's a little bit frustrating to be you because your metrics can be based on sort of the performance of your colleagues in different departments or are because of technical capabilities, like when we talked about the down trees and that you don't currently have dispatch capability. Again, not to sort of belabor the point, but maybe because it is my first budget year, I'm really thinking deeply about what are the sort of the major priorities. What are the things that you see as 311 in terms of those 2 specific areas? 1, the dispatch capability, and then 2, sort of that follow through and making sure that your colleagues are being held accountable for putting in comments and following through. How can we as council sort of support those pieces so that we can continue to bolster this program?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the big things is making sure your requests are in 311 before you go to the CAO or departments for escalation and giving time for the normal processes to work. We need to be better about communicating how long those normal processes take. Our rule of thumb is give us 30 days to get teams out from the departments to do assessments before you escalate, because escalations really are a bit disruptive. if we're doing it right. I understand there is a need for escalations in today's world, but I'd like to get to a place where there is no need because those requests are getting responses in a timely manner. So that kind of natural reinforcement will really help. But the other thing is we have a CAO right now who is very passionate about ensuring that all of us are following through on that fulfillment. And that's the biggest thing, is just supporting the administration in creating that culture of responsiveness. If you think about some of the folks who are responsive, who are responsible for responding, they are very junior, they are in the field. I think it's a change of mindset to be thinking that they're part of customer service. And that's part of we really need to kind of reset that cultural expectation. And so anything you can do to encourage that is really helpful. On the piloting of the dispatch, we own both systems. So we're very excited that, they're both subscription vendor systems in the cloud. We have a pretty good idea how to integrate them. We really just need to define scope for the pilot because it can be very expansive. And I am a big fan of under promise and over deliver. So I want to make sure that we are doing a good, solid pilot to identify all the operational considerations that we need before we go really big with that, because there are things you wouldn't think of that we've already kind of identified. Hey, we really need to think through this before we go forward. So my request on that would be patient. This is a very high priority for us this year as a pilot. And then once we've worked through those operational considerations, we look forward to expanding that capacity.
Thank you. I have just a couple of questions. One is just to have an understanding of what are the services that your team outsources versus what are the internal capabilities. I know that we have, it looks like in this budget year, there are 21 customer care specialists, a customer service manager, a customer service supervisor. Are there any other folks that are providing customer service that are outsourced, or is that the totality of the services?
That's the totality of the services. And I've been very intentional in that because we are supporting many departments. People think that municipalities are pretty static, but we're changing continuously. And having an experienced team that if something changes, I can get word to them on a moment's notice and they can pivot, and they've been trained to pivot, and we can continue to track and respond, I think is much greater value than any savings I might get from a high turnover outsourced environment.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. And so the software, I would imagine the 311 system is an outsourced services. Are there any other services that are procured by the department, contracted?
No. So we've just got the AvPoint Citizen Service that's branded as RVA 311 that includes it's really all one thing in the cloud that's internal portal, external portal, and mobile apps, all one package.
Great. And then I'm wondering, just in terms of measuring usage, do you track the number of citizen users that are logged in? And have you seen any change in that in terms of usage over time?
We've seen a slight increase. It is relatively stable with seasonal differences. So by far the biggest online utilization is in very well-defined discrete requests. A new trash can, leaf collection every year. We see a big spike in the fall of online requests. We were stunned at how quickly people embraced the Family Crisis Fund application online, and delighted because it exposed a whole new population to our online services. Those are the kinds of things that really drive online engagement. I always like to use the analogy of if you see a charge on your credit card that you don't recognize, what do you do? And almost everybody answers, I call the credit card company. They have an online process, but when you're talking about money and that timeliness, people want to talk to somebody. And what you see is 70% of our calls are social services and finance, which is really about benefits and your tax dollars. And we see those, what we have seen thus far is that those are difficult to move from the phone channel to self-service. Last time I looked, which was about a month ago, I think social services was still about 99% phone. Now they have other aspects that are online. The state has Common Help, where all the application processes for benefits occur, and so there are, and finance has RVA Pay, and we really hope to see a big adoption of RVA Pay because not only can you pay there, but you can see your entire billing history there, which really enables self-service that you couldn't do before. You had to call us because you couldn't see that information. So we're really excited about the continued expansion of RVA Pay. That will be a big win.
Thank you. And then one last question, and you might have already answered this, so I apologize if I missed it. But on page 8, when you show the bar chart comparison of the call volume, I'm wondering. So the 2023 and the 2024, I'm assuming that that's not the full year, but those are just the comparable timeframes.
So those are per day averages.
Okay.
Yeah. So we saw now, and it varies. Mondays are always busy. The first of the month is always busy. Annual personal property tax season is always very busy. So, we would go from 600 to 1,200 calls typically. And so in looking at our staffing plan, we're looking at the 80th percentile, being able to meet our service level 80% of the time, not just the average, which is why we staffed up to about 900 calls a day.
Mm-hmm. And so, the increase in 2025, is that largely driven by the water crisis?
We're still determining. Certainly, the first week of the month, we got 8,000 calls, which is, a typical week for us in January might be 4,000. So a lot of people calling for information on distribution locations, water delivery. Certainly that was a big spike, but it's continued. So we have really seen a very large uptick really since the very beginning of January, not before. And that's where we're really trying to understand, is this just a confluence of events and it's going to come back down to our historic average, or are we seeing, a true change in trend that would warrant additional staffing?
And in terms of the types of requests that have come in, you haven't noticed a change in one, it's kind of across the board, billing, social services, it's all been.
Just those things I mentioned, the water crisis was incremental.
Right.
The family crisis fund requests were incremental, but most of those were online. And then we're in the middle of a fairly large billing for delinquent personal property tax. That's driving a lot of calls. And we expect that to continue for another month or so.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Director Burrell.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the great work. Thank your team for us.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Madam Clerk, I think now seeing no board vacancies, we can move to the discussion item of our calendar. And I don't see the attachment for the calendar. Is that being handed out or is it going to be online? Mr. Perkins, would you like to come to the podium? Thanks.
Good afternoon. Will Perkins, Senior Policy Legislative Manager. I do not have a printout of this, unfortunately. Apologies to the clerk's office. I will get that to you shortly. But if you're able to turn around in your chairs, you can see that this is a slightly modified version of the calendar that Chair Jordan shared in a meeting with you all last month in a special planning meeting. And the highlights are places that were changed based on the discussion. And it has 6 primary themes across the top. And then on the rows down going towards the bottom are each meeting. And you'll see the summary of each proposed topic for the meetings. So we're here in February. We have meetings throughout the rest of the year. We've had a great deal of collaboration and communication with our administration partners on setting up this calendar. So I'm really grateful for the collective effort to help put this together and guide your work together for the remainder of this calendar year.
Thank you. And just as a reminder to the committee, this is wet concrete. So this is just trying to sketch out for the rest of the year where things would fall and try and balance out the type of presentations we're getting. And one thing I wanted to just spend a minute on while we're here, and happy to open it up, obviously, is the idea of the audits. And so I asked our auditor to come down because we talked about that a lot in our work session, and wondering if you could just provide a little bit extra context on the audit committee and how any council member can engage in that work. And then you had a good recommendation that I think I received today from you, that when we have your audit review of work in July, that we would invite our IG as well at the same time, because a lot of the work overlaps.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
our audit committee, Riyad Ali, city auditor. Our audit committee is made up of 7 members, as you all know. 5 are citizen members with specialties in the business community. One's required to be a CPA, and one is also required to be a lawyer. And then there's also 2 council members that serve on the audit committee. Currently, it's President Newble and Councilmember Lynch. We have quarterly meetings that are generally set up. Sometimes we, move them around to obviously tie out with audits or investigations that are completed. As the audit committee discusses, we present our audits at the audit committee, and the audit committee gets an opportunity to ask questions about the audits, the recommendations, and administration, gets to explain kind of the path forward of how they're going to implement our recommendations. And so what has been, I guess, a common, since I started as a city auditor about a year ago, I really wanted to improve our recommendation process of issuing and following up on recommendations. We moved to a quarterly process. As you guys have probably seen at this point, every quarter you get a report that tells us essentially how many recommendations are still open, what was implemented over the last quarter, what are the priority levels of the recommendations, high, medium, or low, and kind of break down by department of where the recommendations are. And at the audit committee, every quarter this essentially is produced and it's discussed at length with the departments on, on where they are, what the holdup is. They're either recommendations are either open, closed, or we want to kind of go removed when they're no longer relevant. Sometimes that happens. And we're kind of updating it because, to be fair, sometimes recommendations are in process, right? It's not actually open or closed. Something is happening. It just hasn't happened yet. So we're still updating that report, as you'll see moving forward. But I guess the vast majority of our that discussion on recommendations occurs at the audit committee, and it's a public meeting. Anyone can attend. Lots of people do attend. Anyone who's audited is required to be there. It's also a hybrid meeting, so it's available online as well to be viewed. As I mentioned earlier, for our presentation, I did mention to you that, my office is not over the IG. We both report to the audit committee. So I think that would be valuable as well to kind of include both offices that report to the audit committee for that update, because I wouldn't be able to provide council members with an update on that.
Thank you. And can you speak to what's available online as far as if a council member in the interim between these meetings wants to find out where we are on open audit recommendations?
Yeah, so we keep, per city code, we're required to keep the recommendations uploaded online, and we keep that, I believe, annually updated. So between the reports issuance quarterly, so we're always working with the departments, right? Our new process is continuous, like it's in real time. Recommendations are being closed, worked on, reviewed. We always sample work. When a department says, "Hey, audit, we've done this. Can you close this recommendation?" We say, "Okay, hold on. You need to provide us with evidence, proof, policies, invoices. We have to review it on a sample basis, not a full-fledged audit, but on a sample basis of what you've done to show that you really did do, you did implement the recommendation." So that's happening constantly. And in real time, if you wanted that information, the best way is honestly just to reach out to us. The report is a point in time. Okay, here's where we are as of a certain date. Right, the most recent report, I think we were at 141 open recommendations. We're currently at 150 open recommendations, though currently my staff is working on requests from departments. I think housing has requested some recommendations be looked into for closing. I think Adam is constantly requesting recommendations to be reviewed or updates to be closed. I think he sent a couple today, actually, for us to review. And so it's really in real time, the number.
Got it. Thank you. Questions?
Yes, thank you. So I have some thoughts on the calendar, but as it pertains to this discussion and just for context,
Yes.
and for the public or anyone who is interested, this discussion regarding the audit stemmed from our work session. And I believe Councilwoman Abu Bakr suggested that as a method of kind of ongoing, like an ongoing cadence, that as a regular practice, that when administration makes a presentation to the GovOps committee, that that presentation include just a standard boilerplate report regarding outstanding audit items. And so I guess my question to you is, look, I mean, you know, in my campaign, it became very clear during this election that the city residents are really looking for a systemic, widespread culture shift in City Hall. And so my question to you is, what harm, you know, is there a reason why we shouldn't have, you know, why would we not, just as a matter of practice, you know, the saying, you know, you're going to lose weight the more you get on the scale. I'm wondering, is there any harm and could there potentially be benefit in having that documentation just as a ongoing thing, right? Because look, when you come and stand and you can, you know, the stuff is there. I mean, it's going to encourage some accountability, I believe, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I don't think that, I think that's a good idea. That's actually one of the, you know, when I started and implemented this process, that was one of the reasons, right? Because it's, you know, it's there and you forget about it. That's why I bring it up constantly to remind the city, hey, there's things that we need to improve on. And I think administration was very open and welcome to that process. And I think what you're describing is a good process. I think DPU, for example, has been really good at doing that, at least in the first year that I've been here, giving those updates on where they are. And again, Adam has been excellent on giving those updates. They know exactly where they are. I think one thing to mention too, when you look at the departments that have open recommendations and who would have to, you know, it's departments that we audit more, obviously have more recommendations, right? And the departments that we audit more are done on a risk-based scale. So we audit the departments that are, in audit terms, riskier, right? There's more to audit. There's more money, more contracts, more, you know, things that we focus in on. So I'd also point that out as well. You know, when it comes to recommendations, it's generally going to fall on departments that are audited much more often.
So just as a follow-up, I guess my question is for Councilwoman Jordan, if the vehicle for this would be, is that something just us having some discussion and having some consensus on this, or should this be a paper that is formalized as a standard practice for presentations made?
I think this will have to be a follow-up conversation. But did you want to add to it, Ms. Abu Bakr?
I mean, I would just, obviously, we're talking about something that I brought up in the working group. And, you know, I understand that these reports are brought up quarterly in the audit committee, and I have no qualms with that. I think for me, audits are, and open audit recommendations are symptomatic of government operations as a whole. And so that's why I brought it up as being a standard part of this committee's work, and the presentations that the administration does. I think that there's a portion of this that is the city auditor's office, which is sort of this high level, here's the quarterly report. But for me, again, I think going back to Councilmember Gibson's point about sort of transparency and accountability, which I think does fall under the purview of GovOps, is that these departments should be able to speak, not the auditor, but the departments themselves on a regular basis should be able to speak to council about what is open and what are perceived as liabilities from the city perspective. It's not a gotcha kind of scenario. It's just a best practices. What are we up against? And then we can always go to the auditor and ask for context about, okay, DPU gets audited much more because of X, Y, and Z risk factors. That's totally understandable. I just think the more sunlight we can bring to this, the better.
Let me add as an idea or a thought. And so this is a new thing, right? Our open record, we've always followed them, but we're doing it with much more rigor than ever since I've started. It's in our new process. And so now in our reports, you'll see we define. We've always had priority levels, but they weren't really defined clearly in the past. And we now define them clearly since I started what it means. And so at least in the recommendations I've issued since I've started moving forward, when I say a recommendation is a high priority, that means it's a significant issue that is occurring in the city. And maybe you could focus the conversation on, high priority recommendations. It's something that, when we say high, it means, hey, this needs to be remedied pretty quickly. Whereas when we say low, it's something that's efficiency related. You don't need to rush to do it, but you should do it at some point. And then we say medium, it's something that could cause a significant issue moving forward, but it hasn't yet. So the high really is, this is happening now and should be addressed. And I guess it's a possibility you could be overwhelmed, right? It's 150 recommendations.
Yeah.
So a way to focus might be on the priority level that they were assigned.
Appreciate that distinction.
Thank you very much. Did you have a follow-up point?
No, I would just like to know, next, I guess I have comments too regarding the calendar and some thoughts, but on this matter regarding kind of, again, this kind of regular cadence of presentations and the content, what are the thoughts in terms of next steps?
Well, I think we said we would have a follow-up conversation.
Okay, sounds good. Can I bring up a discussion regarding the calendar? So actually, earlier today, I learned that an email was sent to the body, although I believe, accidentally omitted from the distribution regarding the overtime report, the monthly overtime report, which is sent to this body by resolution proposed by former Councilwoman Nye, with the ongoing information about overtime. And so I appreciated Councilwoman Abubakar forwarded it to me, and it was interesting to see. I haven't had a lot of time to dig into it because I saw it just earlier today, but it illustrates a significant amount of overtime. I believe there was one employee who in just the month of January was paid about $25,000 in overtime. And it wasn't where I expected. I expected in opening this report to see someone who worked in DPU, that they would be at the top of the list, as we understand that they've been working around the clock in January to address the water crisis. So I have a lot of questions, and unfortunately that document has not. For one, I think that as a regular standard practice, that document should be uploaded to this agenda, so that the public has visibility to that report. And I also think that prior, so I had nothing to compare it to, so as I was looking at the report for January, I have no idea what this report looked like in January last year, or in prior years. And I would love to hear also from the auditor in terms of how that report could be enhanced. For instance, if perhaps the administration has to identify some type of code for a reason for the overtime. For instance, is this issue because we simply don't have enough headcount allocated in the budget? Is the issue because of vacancies that are in the department, or is the issue some type of circumstantial issue like a water crisis, to help us? Because look, we're going into budget season. So tying back to the calendar, I would request that at our next meeting in March, that we are supposed to be, one of the yellow highlighted items is regarding the vacancy report, but I also believe that that should be paired with kind of the I would say over the last 24 months of the overtime reports, and that so that we can have a discussion about both of those things, which I think, again, leading into this budget cycle is critical to understand, because it was I'll be frank, I was taken aback when I saw those numbers.
Yes, so from the audit perspective, if I think my understanding, we look at overtime analytics in our reports every year. We've been doing it for years, and that's kind of what brought the issue to light. And the fix have made recommendations on the overtime issue. We do it as a part of a continuous audit every year, and we've made recommendations on addressing the issue. And so when I started last year, and it was one of the first reports we worked on, the overtime, our continuous audit, as a section being overtime, I was taken aback as well, if I'm being honest. And so, that has been discussed. That actually is on our audit plan of this year. We are planning on doing we call it an overtime compliance audit. And the goal was to dig a lot deeper into exactly what you described, the causes of what's occurring. There has been a new policy that was put in place last year to cut back on the overtime. And I'm not sure how effective it is. That's what part of the audit is for, to see if the policy has had an effect on overtime. It was implemented very late last year, I think, by the former CAO. And so our audit was going to look at the effectiveness of that policy and then the root causes, like you described, of what is causing some of the overtime.
I'm going to interrupt right here. I'm sorry. I want to make sure that we stay on agenda because there are people who really care about this, and let's have it as an agenda item at our next meeting, and then people can come. They may want to have public comment, but this wasn't advertised as a discussion item, and I just want to be fair to everyone who would be interested in this.
Yes, my hope is just to have some consensus that at the next meeting in March that we can have a discussion about overtime.
And
so there's one important note that our audit would not be completed by then to have any type of.
Yes, and so my request, again, for context, there is a monthly report
Right.
that is generated and sent to this body by resolution. So my ask is one that. And I don't know if we need to change that resolution to ensure that it's public, because it shouldn't be sent via email, because then something could happen where a council member doesn't get it that should have, which is what happened, right? But also I think that there needs to be public visibility to it. So, but at the next meeting in March, what can be done is that what can be uploaded are the past reports. They are already existing reports, so that the body can talk about these trends as just looking in these documents that have already been completed monthly.
And then thank you so much for being here. Mr. Hull, if you could just step up for a moment on behalf of administration and just remind us if these vacancy reports live somewhere so that we can link that specific hosting location when we are updating our agendas, and just making sure that the frequency that they are being sent out, obviously I think you included us because it comes to GovOps, but just so that we understand the normal process, is it something that you send to the chair and vice chair, and we need to be aware and sharing it out? And thank you for catching that. I didn't.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Adam Hull, Policy Advisor with the City's Operations Portfolio. So to address one of the comments or questions, yes, historically we've submitted those reports directly to the chair and vice chair of this committee, but we're certainly happy to modify that moving forward. We don't have the information or the reports posted. Essentially, the reporting requirement per the resolution is to submit to the committee, but we're certainly happy to revisit and discuss where and how we may be able to revise that moving forward. In terms of the request for the subsequent Governmental Operations Committee meeting, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Department of Human Resources who compiles this report, but pending staff availability, we can certainly make that request to them. I do realize they're already slated to be here, but in terms of providing a substantive presentation for next month, just want to double check and confirm that that will work for them.
Okay, thank you. And to the extent you send information to myself or the vice chair, just go ahead and send it to the whole committee because I'm sure your email is as wild and overflowing as ours, and just we don't need to add an extra layer of having us have to forward it.
Can do.
Thank you. Okay, other comments about this jigsaw puzzle of our calendar at this moment? Okay. Thank you. I think we have a staff report on just sort of boards and commissions in general.
Yes,
Or
thank you,
Staff comment. Thank
Chair
you.
Jordan. I will just recommend or advise members to check. I sent you an email on this past Monday about 1:49 p.m. In that, just provided a list of our boards and commissions that report to this committee, as well as a point of contact for each one, and a code section relevant to each board and commission. Additionally, I'll mention that we are tracking the questions that were sent to the administration related to the water outage. I'll share that document again. That's the list of questions, and as they're updated, we're maintaining a question and answer version of that. Further, I'll say the 3-on-1 documents that Mr. Briel mentioned, the insight data. Our office has begun sharing a monthly summary of that, just to make that as accessible as possible for members. We printed out a copy of that and put it in your mailbox on the 3rd floor, but also that's going to be mailed to you or emailed to you on a monthly basis. Again, the data is available 24/7 on 3-on-1 website, but just to make sure it's tailored to your interest, we're giving you sort of the what's happening in your district version, just to give you that in as easy as form as possible. Last thing I'll mention is Wednesday of next week, the 5th, at the main library is the next meeting for the Public Utilities and Services Commission. Their water subcommittee will be meeting, which actually is a group of subcommittees. They've formed subcommittees for the water treatment plant, stormwater, and wastewater, and they've combined those groups into one subcommittee meeting next Wednesday at 3 p.m. At the main library. That meeting's noticed with the clerk's office, but we are there to support them as well.
Thank you. And we did have, I think, a lot of questions about boards and commissions in our work session. Does anyone have further questions about the boards and commissions that report up to us? All right. Well, I think we are at the conclusion of our agenda. Any other comments about the calendar? Okay. And then just sort of summarizing some of the main points of discussion here when it comes to the calendar. We can look at this next month as sort of a test case for the idea of the audit report, sub-report. So, for March, we have DPU coming. We have the Office of Sustainability. I don't think they've been audited. HR, we'll have to check with our auditor and reach out to them to see sort of like what would that look like, and it might give us a sense for the value of it. Is it redundant to the audit committee? Is it additive? But it could be sort of like a trial run to see what that looks like in a GovOps committee. Members?